you can adopt a victim mentality or you can adopt a superpower mentality. There's no reason why I should be a fashion model or a musician or even a serial entrepreneur. The only reason is because I am different and I bring that to the table and I try to teach my kids that that's a mindset thing. And that's something that doesn't apply, that applies to every single person in America could see that. And I think that's like the root of the American dream and what I hope we can think about as skilling for people. And that's very different
Yeah.
than math and science.
Sonny Caberwal, welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. We are thrilled to have you on. So you have a lot of things in your background, but we're here most importantly to talk about your role as a father and ultimately what led you to build legends. So without me spoiling your introduction, why don't you tell the audience who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into this thing, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here with you guys. My name is Sonny Caberwal. I am a dad of 3. I'm from born and raised in North Carolina. I now live in Austin, Texas. I've lived all over the world, done a lot of different jobs. Been a corporate lawyer. I've been probably the world's most unlikely fashion model. Been in a band with 1 billion streams. And I've built and sold 3 companies. My mission, my passion, and how I think I found you guys is that I care so much about what we're teaching the next generation. And I think that it is imperative. I couldn't find solutions that I wanted to teach my kids the skills that I think they needed. I went on a big path to try to figure that out. The result has been a company that I'm working on now called Legends, where we teach kids how to train their confidence alongside their families. It's something I'm really proud of. It's something I did with my own daughter. So I'm user number 1. I think that's how I met Brandon here. And I am passionate about bringing and empowering parents, men and women, to be able to support their families so their kids can have the skills they need to be successful in the future.
I love that, man. And confidence is so important. But, Mr. GQ, founder of all these companies, did you struggle with confidence, or was it something you just noticed that your children were and you wanted to do something about it?
It's funny because it's like, I grew up, like I said, I grew up in this tiny town in North Carolina. And it's like, we didn't talk about these kinds of things when I was growing up. I grew up in an immigrant household. And a lot of people would be like, was that tough in North Carolina? They just assume it would be bad. But North Carolina, Asheboro, where I grew up, was a town where I think family values were really strong. And people were really welcoming to my family. Hot, unpopular take that, like, not every southern town is filled with hatred. So we felt very welcome. My parents still live where they born and raised, where I was born and raised. They love Asheboro. I love Asheboro. I think I don't think anyone would have been like, you're going to be a GQ model when you grow up. But I think how people decide they want to show up in the world ends up being a matter of perspective a little bit. And so, I think when I was growing up, my dad was always like, he came to America because he always believed in the American dream. And he was like, look, if you dream really big, you can make it. And I didn't dream about any of those things. I always wanted to, try to be the best version of myself. And that's what I try to teach my kids. I've had a very unique path to get there. And what I realized is that everybody has this unique capacity to show up in different ways. I believe everybody's uniquely amazing. God makes everybody as a unique person that is incredible. And our job is, as parents and as a society, is to help bring out that uniqueness in every child. And so that's why I feel so compelled to work on this project, both professionally and mostly personally as a dad. My job first and foremost is to make sure my kids can see that in themselves.
Sorry, my mic died out there. We'll cut that. Sonny, take me back to the moment as a dad when you realized that your daughter was needing something more than just your usual pep talk. What was going through your mind when you found that out and that you needed to do something to help her?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. Everything, it's like everything happens slowly and then it happens all at once. You know, um, she was struggling for a bit of time. She was sad. I could see that she wasn't doing well, in that she was like, I don't. She would say, I don't think I'm good enough, or she'd come home and you'd hear a little bit of negative self talk around the edges. And I don't know if I think a lot of parents can relate to this. Uh, Different kids go through hard times. I have twin boys, and they're actually the opposite. I call them princes of positivity. They believe that they're like I'm amazing. Like I'm gonna be in the NFL, in the NBA, and play Major League Baseball. And my daughter's the opposite, so she'd be like, "Well, I don't think I'm doing well," and then she would say things that would be getting worse and worse, like, um, I'm bad at these things. I hate myself for doing these things, and I thought that there we look at kids and people be like, you should put her in therapy. There should be some drugs they can give her or something, and I was like, there must be something that we could do as a family that we could work together on. But I'm not trained in how to do that, so we went looking for therapists. Therapists are really expensive. And I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and couldn't find them. And then it's somebody I don't know. So I was wondering, like, shouldn't there be something that my wife and I could do with our own kids that like could help us figure this out on our own? And so that led me down this path. Um, Around the same time, actually, somebody asked me, what would the Boy Scouts look like if they were started from scratch? And I thought that was like a really powerful provocation. Like, what would you teach kids um, outside of school? Like, if they might not get lost in the woods. Someone said it this way. They were like, they might not get lost in the woods, but they might get lost online. So, what would be the skills they need to navigate the world there? Um,
It's a
that
really
was
good
all I
point.
needed. And then when COVID happened, and I saw what kids were learning in school, like it was right in my living room, and I'm like, this isn't going to help them. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to spend my time doing.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you made too about like I speak on this a lot, about like how men were supposed to be the protector, right? And we default to like, oh, physical protection, right? Oh, I need to be strong and all that kind of stuff, which sure, yes, that's important. But like, where's the real danger? It's online. It's in these thoughts that our kids are having. It's all these outside influences. Um, and if that stuff is just bouncing around in their head rent free, that's going to potentially shape the rest of their life, right? It'll become a default programming of I'm not good enough or I'm not enough. And I've heard my daughter say similar things, right? She'll like, I'm so bad at this. And like, really, really charged language around those things. And so what, I'm just learning about you and kind of what you're building, but I intentionally, we have, family values that we post on the wall that we're all kind of, adhering to. Being positive is one of those values, but then anytime I would hear it, I would just simply, kind of correct it gently in the moment. No, honey, you're not bad. You just had a bad test or whatever. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. Saying what's actually true, consistently and casting that vision for her has definitely made a positive impact. But I think Dustin has something too. But yeah, I love your desire to start from, hey, we can do this ourselves. We don't necessarily need some outside thing. And that seems to be this very dangerous notion that a lot of parents have bought into of like, you're not somehow equipped to make your own kids' lives better. You need something beyond yourself. And, I don't know where that started, but we certainly have the primary role with our kids. So Dustin, take it away.
Yeah, I was listening to Matthew McConaughey talk about his father, and his dad would not allow him to say, I can't. He would say, you know what, I think you're just having some trouble. And so that's a big part of positivity, right? Is that there is no I can't, there is no this is impossible, there is no I'm not good. It's just you're having some trouble right now and we can fix that. So I think that's what made him kind of such a positive person. But I'm curious, Sonny, if you were able to identify what caused those troubles for your daughter. Do you think it was school? Do you think it was online? Do you think it was something in your family maybe that made her feel that way? Like when you drilled down to it, what do you think caused her to have some of those challenges she was having?
I think a lot of it is, you're in a social dynamic and you hit something where people are learning their boundaries, how they interact with each other. So just because somebody says something mean to you, I try to teach her, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means they're particularly when you're young, they're exploring who they are. That's a very, a lot of people might not agree, but kids are trying to figure out who am I, how do I relate to other people, and depending on who you are, you could take that as a negative thing. So I think that was an issue with that, and then she was growing up in a COVID time where you couldn't get to see a lot of people. I will say, like when I grew up, it was very different, man. Like I said, I grew up in rural North Carolina in the early '80s as a Sikh guy with a turban, and again, I don't place any blame on anyone, but there wasn't like this. Oh, we got to make sure everyone's feelings are like have to be respected. I think that my dad taught me something that I aspire to teach my kids. That, like how you view yourself is either as a you can view yourself as a victim or not. Is if someone says something bad to you, does it make it true or not? And how you choose to react to the information is really, really important. And how much you're told that like you're a victim of everyone being mean to you. They're bad, and you don't deserve that, but everybody else is bad, but you're okay. Like that's a really powerful thing. My dad's like, look, it doesn't matter what anybody says. You either show up and do the right thing, or you don't show up and do the right thing. And you're gonna learn that. That's gonna be your superpower or not. And that can be an unpopular position, but it's something I try to teach my children because it isn't a minority majority thing. It's a mindset that you walk into that goes, you're going to show up as a different person every single day. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black, brown, or whatever. There's going to be environments where you're going to be different. You have to take your difference and make that your superpower, not your weakness. And you can adopt a victim mentality, or you can adopt a superpower mentality. And I would say, like, there's no reason why I should be a fashion model or a musician or even a serial entrepreneur. The only reason is because I am different, and I bring that to the table, and I try to teach my kids that that's a mindset thing. And that's something that doesn't apply, that applies to every single person in America could see that. And I think that's like the root of the American dream and what I hope we can think about as skilling for people. And that's very different than math and science. And I saw that when we were in COVID. Like, COVID is like, okay, we're teaching kids the same skills from the past, but they need new skills to walk into this new arena. So
yeah,
yep. And that's ultimate freedom too, right? If you have the courage to not be swayed by others' negative opinions, especially when they're not true, you're free, right? You're sovereign. So I love that, man. Brandon, go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, the Legends app does that brilliantly. It teaches you how it basically, for me, what it did was it's a tool that adds on to me building my son's internal dialogue, right? Us parents, it's our charge and our responsibility to make sure that inner voice that's in there is built up healthy. And Legends does a brilliant job of painting some of the missing puzzle pieces for the kids. And then it uses like people that we would look up to as examples. So like there was this real example about Michael Jordan. He went from being somebody who was told no and he didn't get picked to being one of the best humans to ever play basketball ever, right? And it's
he's the
because
GOAT. It's not up for discussion.
Oh,
he's the
yeah,
GOAT.
Hands down. But like, it goes through self-image, self-concept, self-awareness, self-confidence, self-esteem. There's all these different aspects that we really don't think about. We think they're all just the same thing, but like if you really look down at the heart of them, there's little nitpick things that are really important. And so that's why I love Legends. And I'd love for you to tell us maybe like, like when you're spending that 5 or 10 minutes a day with your kid, what's one session that you've done with maybe your daughter where she had a breakthrough, and like what made it so?
I'll tell you the one that's been the biggest breakthrough, one of the most obvious early breakthroughs in the program. Our program's almost 180 sessions over a year. But once you can identify your inner critic, and the principle is metacognition, right? But like no one's trying to hear that. They're like, there's a voice in your head that's negative. And once you can be like, oh, that's just that voice in my head. And you can practice going, oh, that's not me. That's a voice in my head. And you can name it. Naming creates separation. It's why, Kobe adopted, the Black
The Black
Mamba.
Mamba. Yep. It's his alter
Sasha
ego.
Fierce or
Yeah.
Beyonce. People adopt these alter egos because it gives them separation, so they can think about it. It's a tool for metacognition, right? So when a child can learn that at an early age, they can quickly separate that negative self-talk from themselves. And that is probably the single most impactful tool I've seen, not just for my own child, which is for my own child's experience, but I talk to on average one family a day from Legends, for an hour. As part of I spend 15% of my time just talking to families, hearing what they're doing, what's going on. That's by far the biggest trick I hear. That's really helped their families grow.
Just to clarify, the naming it so you can create that separation between the
Naming
fleeting
your inner
thought.
critic, understanding your inner critic, understanding you have an inner critic and an inner fan is part of understanding that you have an inner monologue. But literally just going, that's a bad voice. Can I name my bad voice? Then when you hear the bad voice, you're like, that's just that name talking.
Yeah, it's just that loser talking. It's not real. Yeah.
And
powerful.
then we practice going, all right, what do you say to that voice? And now you can move past it.
Love that, man.
If you can name it, you can tame it. That was something I struggled with a lot as a kid. I would have these big feelings and didn't necessarily know what they were. If I was sad, it was maybe actually anger that was being sublimated as sadness, and it was very hard for me to process a lot of these emotions in a healthy way. And so that's a big goal for me with my son, is to kind of to be the Mr. Rogers of the modern generation. And what do you do with the mad you feel when you're angry? How do you handle that? And so it sounds like the Legends app does an amazing job of doing that. I was thinking, as you mentioned, growing up in rural North Carolina, I remember going to middle school. I was one of the only white kids in a predominantly black area, and I was maybe 11 years old, and somebody called me a little cracker one time. And I was like, why? I'm not a Ritz cracker. It doesn't make any sense, right? And I learned later kind of what that meant. And so I was curious, if you don't mind sharing, is there like a hilarious or crazy thing that you ever called, or like a story, where someone was like, oh, this guy's got a turban? Like there's got to be something kind of interesting that has stuck with you, right? And as an adult, as a kid, you're like, man, I can't believe that happened to me, later as an adult. I don't know if there's anything funny you can share.
I will say, we grew up in such a small town before like the Iraq War and stuff that there weren't. It didn't feel like in the 80s everything wasn't so connected, right? So, actually, my parents were doctors, and so there weren't. It was just black people, white people, and like 2 Sikh families in our town. So the only association was that like you must be a doctor, because like that's the only thing you could be, right? I didn't even know that there were other people. Like it's actually the other way around. I didn't know that there were other people who wore turbans that weren't Sikh. That's how like you imagine, like I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard, man. It wasn't commonplace to consider that like we were even like a minority in that way, because we grew up in a pretty like spiritual community. Like people were Christian. We grew up as Sikh, and everyone was like, okay, we're all like family oriented people. I thought that was really funny. Like I grew up like watching the Dukes of Hazzard, and I didn't think anything about it. I didn't think about anything about growing up in the South until like I was in my 30s or 40s. It didn't even occur to me that was a big deal. Now I totally understand why and how the circumstances have changed, but for my family, there were always people who said mean things, and there were always people who called fat people things, or people, if you were too tall, too short, you had a big nose, big ears, wore the wrong shoes, you get made fun of for everything. And the way I was taught, might be wrong, was like, if you're really good, nobody can deny you. So just be really good. Your goal isn't to be the best in town, your goal is to be the best in the world. And that was always something that stuck with me, that I hope we can keep for. I try to instill for my kids, but I think that's part of what makes America and what our promise is so great, that we can instill in our kids. Like right now, I want to make sure that we're teaching kids that everything isn't like a series of problems. Like, oh, you have this problem and this problem and this problem and this limitation on your capabilities. I my my desire is to help our kids learn that they have limitless potential. Limitless potential. We live in the greatest place in the world with the most opportunity. We're sitting here, a bunch of dads, talking about how we're going to make it great. You know, what better place to grow up in the whole world? And now it's on them. They have to go and say, all right, I accept this responsibility. I know I have a job to do. And how am I going to get there? And that's the skills that I think we need to arm young kids with these days. We don't need to beat them up on all these other things. We need to help them understand that they have enormous capability and they have an obligation to live up to it.
Yeah, I love that so much, man. Brandon and I, we have a men's coaching program we run, and we see so many adult men, most of them older than us, actually. Most of our clients are in their late 40s, just crippled by negative self-talk, right? They've let the world convince them that they're small, that they can't do more. And I love the way that you frame that as it's not a series of problems. It's really a series of opportunities, right? So, okay, maybe you don't succeed at this thing. What's the next opportunity, right? And when you make that your habit of kind of looking for the next best thing you can achieve, as opposed to listening to all the noise, none of it starts to matter, right? And then you can truly be free and build something of worth from any background, really. And like you said, everyone's going to have a negative opinion at some point. It doesn't matter if you're blue, black, green, or orange, tall, short, whatever. Someone's going to have something negative to say. And it's really just that courage to be disliked and drive on with your mission that is right. And so what we've seen a lot of, and what we think maybe gets a lot of people stuck, kids especially, but even adults, is social media. Because that's essentially, in a lot of ways, a constant negative critic. The comparison game, right? Everyone's showing the snapshots of how perfect their life is. How have you tackled that with your family, or maybe some of these families you're interviewing, each week? What are strategies learned around that, and any ways to maybe mitigate that or reframe the use of social media to not be such a negative impact?
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of the equation. I mean, I do understand why social media is negative, and to be, super transparent, I am not someone who engages with social media with the same frequency as a lot of people do, because I don't find it suits me well. Um, I think understanding how you react to situations and taking yourself out of bad situations is a good thing. You know, that being said, I think social media can be a powerful tool if you know how to use it. Here's how I think about it with my family. I don't believe, so I believe all of the conversation that we're having in America around delaying social media for kids, I think that makes sense. I don't believe in age gating things, generally speaking. I don't believe that, if you're 16, all of a sudden you're going to be better equipped than if you're 15. That obviously makes no sense. What I suggest is that we start accepting the fact that people need to be trained to be on really powerful platforms. And I wish there was a driver's license for social media. So because that doesn't exist, I have a de facto version of that in my house. If you want to go online and be on a online platform with other people, you have to demonstrate certain types of responsibility to me. That means you have to be able to put the phone down. When I say put the phone down, you have to not reach for the phone when we're having dinner. You have to be able to have people say negative things to you and not fall apart. And I think of them as a series of tests. And I think we would be better off, instead of pointing fingers and saying, oh, our kids are too fragile, they can't handle this, the algorithms are too bad, boo social media, they should go, let's just make stronger kids. Let's make stronger
Boom.
kids, and let's make sure that we can understand as families what that means. Let's hold ourselves and our kids to an accountability standard that says, I expect if you're going to be able to put your phone down, I need to be able to put my phone down. So don't hold your kids to an accountability standard that you yourself are unwilling to live up to, right? And if you can't do those things, then you really have to ask yourself, what is it that you expect out of your children? And I think these are journeys that we have to go on. These are the most important conversations we could be having as a society and really as a family.
Yeah, I think so many men, when they have kids, it puts them on that journey of self-awareness and growth because they see the need to be the better version of themselves for their children. And for me, like it took, gosh, a decade to heal and fix a lot of things. So, Legends has this really unique way of like if a dad doesn't have those skill sets, it kind of guides them. So, what would your first steps or advice be to a father instead of a kid to start making those first steps for themselves, to be better educated, to have more self awareness, and to kind of help them selves so they can be that model for their children more so than just being on the app with them? What would be those recommendations?
Oh, I'll take this in a couple parts. One is I agree that it's I want to say it's not obvious. You don't just wake up one day and figure this out. Like I didn't know any of these things. I just knew there was a problem. I knew I'm a dad of a daughter who who's facing a tough time, and she's not on social media. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it's not going to be better. And I don't know that nothing I'm doing about school is going to train her to do that. That's my journey that I'm on. So that's our research team. We've tried to figure it out. How can we help um, ourselves? And the way we constructed Legends is to help parents and kids at the same time, because I don't. Most parents didn't learn these tools, and then I realized, we started doing a lot of research on this, and like, how did kids learn? Kids learn. Learning efficacy is a function of having a trusted adult in the loop. Now, ideally, it's a parent. But if it's not a parent, it's a teacher. If it's not a teacher, it's a coach. If it's not a coach, it's a minister at church. It's somebody in there is a trusted adult that a kid understands. That's where learning comes from. So we try to construct this environment that says maybe we could teach both people at the same time. Because you know how like you can't a parent trying to lecture your kids is very difficult. Your kid's not trying to hear that. But what if you offloaded it to a third party? In our case, this is Jordan Coach that's lecturing both of you. And then you and your kid are on a learning journey together. Turns out that is by far the most effective way to drive learning, and it creates a community between you and your kid. So essentially, that was my goal with this program, is so that another person was making me and my daughter go through this program at the same time so that we had a bonding experience, and I knew we both had to do the same work and we both learned it. We could make Legends for adults right now, but I think the thing is, when you're young and you can have somebody go through it with you, impact is so much greater. Now, if you're a
Yeah.
parent and you're trying to understand this right now, there aren't a lot of tools that exist out there. I mean, honestly, like your podcast is one of them. There's not a lot of places where you can go to be like, particularly if you're a dad, you're a leader of your household, you're supposed to know the answers. You're not supposed to go asking for help. That's not a thing you get to do. So hopefully, like, we can build more tools that are research based and allow you to go on these journeys with people that you trust and care about.
I've noticed it's fascinating with my son when I come from a place of ego. He's only 5, but he immediately knows that if I'm lecturing him. Whereas if I come to a place of curiosity, so for example, I'm working out, he's not that interested in joining me and working out with me. Come on, you need to do some push-ups with me. No interest. But when I tell him, can you be my coach? Can you get me to do some extra reps and help me? Then he jumps in, he coaches me, he's saying, you're doing great. And then he wants to jump in and do push-ups and workouts. And it sounds like it's the same thing here, where if there's a third party, like you mentioned, or someone else helping you in that direction, that's huge. So I wanted to ask
actually two different things. Let me just jump in here. It's two different things, but what you brought up is an even better point. So so when you learn something, so when your child learns something, their ability to teach it to you is really powerful for sticking with learning, right? So it's one thing if you're learning something together. That's what we were doing at Legends. But what you're suggesting is like, how about you teach me how to work out? And that works out great. I do that. I mean, I've done that before, and it works out great. It requires you to like really, really have considered it. But I'll like go swimming, and my kids are stronger swimming than me, and I'm like, could you guys like make sure I don't drown? And they love it, and it's a really it's a huge experience where you transform and you put yourself in a position of vulnerability with your kids. And what ends up happening isn't that you become smaller. What ends up happening is your kid becomes stronger. And there's a way of thinking about it where somebody put it to me this way. It's like we always grew up thinking there was just like room for one seat at the table, but it's like you could just pull up more chairs. Like they get to pull up another chair at the family, be like, oh, I guess I'm a leader in this family too. Not like, oh, my dad's less of a leader. That's what you're describing, Dustin.
I think you're exactly right. And my fear initially was, oh, if I put myself in that situation, he won't respect me. That has not been the case at all. He respects me more. And I think that's a great thing that a lot of dads make the mistake of doing is I always have to be the leader, the top dog. You really don't. You can let your kids jump in and, be a big part of that leadership of the household. So what I did want to ask you, though, is you have boys and girls. When it comes to navigating this social media journey, have you found that there are gender differences? I know depression is much higher on Instagram with girls than it is with boys. And then, boys tend to be more aggressive with social media. So I've found there's different challenges that boys and girls have. Have you noticed anything with your boys and girls in particular where you have to train them differently, or is it the same set of challenges regardless?
I think this is like, I think this is a really, I want to give a really simple answer, but I want to make sure every family understands that, like, as with education, it's super nuanced. Like, every boy and girl is going to show up on the internet and in the real world differently. And so I want to, if I could suggest one thing, you have to just be aware about what your circumstances are, not what the prescription is. Because there's no writ large prescription for boys on the internet. Some boys show up and they're like, I don't care. And some boys show up and they're like, I care about everything I see, right? And I think that's like really important to remember that like you could live in a house with like multiple kids and they're all different. They could be the same gender and different genders. And I guess I would just suggest that like don't let strangers into your house. And that's what the internet is. Like until your kids are ready to deal with strangers, you're letting strangers into your house. And you wouldn't send your kids to a sleepover at somebody's house. I mean, maybe you would. I don't recommend sending your kids to sleep over some stranger's house when you don't know what their values are. You don't know what that kid's like, because it does matter to them, right? And if you let your kids talk to strangers, you let strangers define who your kid is. And that is okay, so long as your kids can demonstrate that they have the capacity to understand who they are, what your family values are, what their values are, and then they're going to go out into the world. But that's the training that we need to be doing as families, and we can't leave that up to politicians to decide. And I don't think that there is a politician who can decide that's what your family's values are. You get to decide what your family's values are, and it's important that you take that into your own hands. Otherwise, someone else will decide it for you.
Yep. And one of the rules that I've had to institute in my family is like I built a computer for my son because I wanted him to learn like programming and logic and computers and all that stuff. And he ended up being on games on the internet. And I had to completely shut it all down. I've removed the computer completely from his room. Even with all the settings that I had as an IT guy, it was still not enough. And, it's now where he's completely off of screens for the entire month of November. We are just doing a complete detox off of it because I've just seen differences. The more screen and the more online time that they get, whether it's social media or games or anything with the dopamine addiction there, it's just like it's detrimental to them. But, going back to the principle that you're discussing there, one of the big things I teach my daughter is, and my son is, was it fact or was it opinion? So like I teach them those differences. So like a good example, your hair is brown. Well, yeah, that's fact. You're ugly. Well, that's somebody's opinion. So it's like they have to understand and have the responsibility of carrying that discernment of what's what. And I think drilling that in them through experience is one of the best ways to do it. And I think Legends does that pretty good too. So for me personally, though, it's like that's a skill it's so lost in society. Like people are so emotionally driven because of it too. Like if somebody says something, they just take it as gospel or they just take it to heart. And it's like, well, that's just that person's opinion. And it's like, if it's fact, then that's maybe something that you take some time to review and sit on, sure. But yeah, that principle to me is like, it's so crucial because kids don't have that until later on. And if you can get them ahead of the curve there, I feel like it's so much more beneficial.
Can I tell you guys my dream? I have a dream.
Yes, please. Let's hear it.
I do have a dream. I have a dream that we will be able to revamp our education system so that we can teach kids the skills they really need to learn. And I don't think I have the answer. I think it would be wrong. So this is a hot topic for a lot of dads, so I wanted to share this. And I've spent 5 years and over 10,000 hours in this area, so I feel like I'm very qualified to opine on this area.
We want to hear it.
I don't believe that one size fits all. And I believe 77% of Americans agree with me. They believe K-12 is moving in the wrong direction. But only 25% of people are thinking about new schools because they don't know what to do. And I think that replacing a broken system with another system isn't going to work. I think every family has the right to decide what is right for their kids. I think it's super important for American families to think about what it is that they value. If I was to suggest there's just one thing the dads out here could figure out, be like, what do I care about for my family and why? What are the 3 most important lessons that I want my kids to learn and why? Is it honesty? Is it hard work? Is it resilience? Is it never giving up? But you got to pick values that you care about and like embody, and that will shape everything. Where you go to school, what do you think about? And those things should be true to you, right? And you have to give your kid the room to be like, maybe they can choose their own too, right? But once you show up with your own set of values that ideally you talk about with your wife, and you go, hey, this is our family's values. Do we agree on these things? Now we're going to show up every day and we're going to start building them in. That is a transformational way of thinking about education in the United States. And then, math, science, reading, writing, all that stuff happens. But then the skills of like, why am I doing this? Like, what do I think about? What matters to me and my family really can begin to get driven home. And then we're immune to some of the social media stuff, some, troll farms from some other place where they just like say stuff just to like instigate you. That doesn't matter because you thought about it and it starts from your home. And I think that is the most important thing. I don't know why we don't emphasize that at all. Maybe because it takes a little bit of time and the kind of work that you guys are doing.
Well, I think like I was talking about earlier, we've almost been conditioned to outsource everything. Like everything else is responsible for you, not you. And somehow we've drifted so far from personal responsibility And if you're a dad listening, which most of the audience is dads listening to this, you are responsible for your family and yourself. And so you may not have all the answers, but that means you are responsible for the outcomes of your family, right? And you need to look inward and define those values. I think I agree. That's exactly where you should start, because your values essentially becomes the filter for how you do everything in the world, your left and right limits. And if you teach those to your kids, then everything they do is from that unified position of strength, as opposed to soaking it in from all these outside sources. And just anecdotally, what I've been doing with my daughter, she's a lot like me. She's really hard on herself when she gets something wrong. I'm trying to teach her how to not self-destruct every time you mess up once. Math is a struggle for her. It's not her best subject. She doesn't care for it. I didn't care for it. It's just not my thing. It's not her thing. And, she'll make comments where she's really hard on herself about it. And I'll stop her and just very calmly tell her, look, I don't care what your score is. What I care is, did you work hard? Did you actually practice? Did you actually put your effort in? And if your best effort was genuinely not a very good score, I don't care. It's not going to matter 10 years from now, right? No one's ever asked me how good I am at math, and I'm doing just fine, right? I've succeeded in life without having perfect scores on that, right? And so it ties back to those values of, we work hard, we do the right thing when no one's looking, right? It's that kind of stuff. That's what's going to matter in the long run, not scores on tests. And so, that, I think, as parents, we are the biggest voice in that kind of inner development for our children, is showing them that, yes, try hard. Yes, of course, we want good grades, but ultimately it doesn't matter in the long run. The real world is not about your test scores from elementary school. It's about your work ethic, your drive, your character, right? These intangible things that, you can't go acquire those. They have to be built from within. So Dustin, I think you had a thing on this too. I didn't want to be long-winded.
When Sonny, you looked like you had a rebuttal if you wanted to jump in real quick.
Well, I do want to bring up a point around education that may help dads think about this. There are two things. Education is really, I don't want to make it so simplistic, but there are really two things that you learn. There's skills and values. Skills are like things that you can get better at, and values are things you believe to be true. Just think about this for a while, but education broadly falls into these two buckets. Skills I can learn, math, science, whatever, and values are things that I believe to be true, but there's no quantifiable, working hard is a good idea, right? And so I believe it's a family's job to help instill values, and skills are things that you can outsource. But values come from the family. Skills are things you outsource to school, tutors, and people like that. And if we were going to go do this exercise, it would be really fun to go, okay, now for other dads watching, you're like, okay, sounds good. Skills I can defer. I could take them to jujitsu class. I can take them to math. I could take them to this. But value. So what are you can only have 3 values that you really can show up for all the time and be like, these are the things that drive our family. And I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to hear what you guys think, or for each of you, what are the 1 to 3 values that you have thought about and you're like, this is what defines me and my family? Because it's helpful to see it from other dads like you, where you're like, oh, that's interesting. I like that. So I was going to ask you guys if that's what you...
Yeah,
I'll jump in.
Let's go around the horn. Dustin, kick it off. And then,
So we talked to John Mayo a couple weeks ago, and he really, we talked about intentionality versus curiosity. And he mentioned how he thought that intentionality was the most important thing, but it's actually curiosity. And so ever since then, I've listed curiosity, being interested in my kids in particular, is absolutely essential as a value. So that's number 1 for sure. Being kind to ourselves, to others, number 2, top value right there. Because, when you have that inner critic and you're being mean to yourself, that's unkind. And we spend the most time with ourselves of anyone else. So if you're going to be kind to somebody, be kind to yourself. That's absolutely essential. And then willingness to overcome challenges is an absolutely essential value as well. I struggle with that when something's not easy. I tend to, take it a little too hard. My son's the same way. When he really hits an obstacle, he'll fall apart a little bit. So that willingness to overcome and continue to work hard despite those challenges, that's definitely my number 3 there.
So I'm trying to choose my words carefully because we're talking about values, right? And words mean things. So from a values point of view, not necessarily a skill. I was tempted to say adaptability, but I think that's a skill actually. It's been very important in my life, but I don't think that's necessarily a value. So the 3 that I'll list here just real quickly is, and what we have posted on our wall, I'm cherry picking a few. Number 1 is, we love God, number 1, and we serve him. 2 is that we are kind to each other. We speak kind to each other as a family. And the last one that I think really is super valuable is that we help each other to be brave. And we said it that way because I didn't want any one of us thinking that you have to be some like invincible superstar all the time. You need a tribe, right? And when you eventually grow out of our family and start your own, you should still have the same thing of where you rely on those around you to continue to help you be brave. And I think courage is very important because courage is multifaceted. It's not necessarily an act on a battlefield. It can be in hard conversations with people you love. So yeah, those are the 3 I'll say.
Yeah, for me, I got so many, so it's really hard for me to narrow them down, but I would say intentional, thoughtful, and courageous, because our thoughts carry our actions, and our actions prove our character. And I think that, so many people are not intentional in specific things that they do. If they were intentional with everything that they do, and they were courageous, like all it takes is 20 seconds of pure courage to make a world of difference in your life. You could go on a completely different path. So I teach that to my kids often. And then being thoughtful. So it's like every problem has a solution. It's a matter of time, affect, or knowledge, and effort. That's it. There's going to always be a solution. I don't care what naysayers think, so it's being thoughtful and courageous. So I think that's kind of like the trifecta. If you really put them together and you work with them together and you understand them intimately, it's just, man, I think you can crush in any situation.
And now we got to hear yours.
I think one of my number 1s is you have to try hard. I don't think it matters whether you win or lose. Yeah. But if you don't try, it doesn't count. And I think that the other thing is that everybody has flaws and weaknesses. Put another way, I think everyone is uniquely great. And your job is to figure out what your unique greatness is. And I think you do have a God-given obligation to figure out how you can serve and show up in the world. And I think that is something that you can't shy away from. And the last thing I would say is that in our spiritual belief, everybody is one and connected together. And so it's very similar to a lot of spiritual traditions where it's like you have an obligation to show up without fear and without hatred towards other people, regardless of what's shown up towards you. And so when you put all those 3 things together, you can show up in a very different way. And I think those things are very, very powerful. You really think about those values. If you really, really consider those values at a deep level and activate them, you're going to probably do pretty well in your community. You're going to show up and be a pretty happy person. And I think that is one of the things that's the thing that I really wish we can kind of drive forward with our kind of parent-led education. I view this as a new category of parent-led education where we can go, okay, our kids can be transformed through these types of learnings.
Yeah, and that's just real quick, Brandon. Sorry, it's what you're describing there too is when someone is so firm in those values that you emanate a presence, right? It's influence, and people are naturally attracted to someone like that. And it's this idea that when you shine brighter, you're not dimming the lights of others. You're giving them the courage or permission to also shine bright themselves. And so you're almost like a lightning rod, right? And so if you teach that to children and they just go out into the world, they naturally will have these other hungry people who want to also do good and reach their full potential attracted to them. And it's, success begets more success, not financially. I'm talking about as a core person. It becomes more contagious. It's like a exponential growth process. I found that to be the case in my own journey, and I've seen it play out with all of my clients. Right, when they just get a little bit, and other people start to see it, it just keeps piling on, and it's this like uplifting experience. So I agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying there, and I think we oftentimes don't realize how important our words are as fathers or as leaders into the people that we serve. How our kind of spark can really get someone to reach their full potential. And so don't downplay your own presence in that equation. Brandon, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, I just wanted to kind of go into. I'm really curious, Sonny, as to what your thoughts are with because you're in the ed tech realm. You are one of the partners that parents can go out to and use as a tool to teach their kids stuff they're not going to learn in these cookie cutter school systems, right? So how do you think that like ed AI and ed tech is going to disrupt a lot of the education system itself in the next few years?
It's Brandon, I don't know if I shared with you. I was asked to go lead $100 million fund to go invest in education to help change American education. So that's what I spent a lot of time over this past year thinking about. And I see, I don't see enough bold enough ideas where we're like, hey, how can we? I think there's a lot of ideas that relate to how do we turn a legacy system into something that's marginally better. But I'm trying to figure out what's something that can really help families on their own who are struggling right now, and I think that I hope that we're going to begin to see a lot more opportunities for people to understand and remember that they have plenty of choice. You talked about intentionality. We don't have it's easy to talk about change if you're an economist or you're, you're in a big corporate setting where you're like, oh, 10 years from now, this is what's going to happen. I'm like, dude, I have a 13-year-old. I need these changes like tomorrow.
Now, yeah.
I have an 11-year-old. I can't wait for the political machinations to change. And so my belief is that we have to empower American families to do what's right for their family as fast as humanly possible. And we need to be driving far more support through funding and infrastructure to families so they can build solutions for their own families and their own communities. And I think there are only two ways to think about it in the United States. I think there's generally like two schools of thought. As I've talked to investors, there's like the we know best school of thought, and there's the let the people decide school of thought. And I'm in the let the people decide school of thought. Like you need to empower high agency families and communities to help define what works for their communities in America. I think it's imperative that we do so. I think we don't spend nearly enough time talking about it. I think we get stuck talking about big political systems and things that are not going to help our families. And I think that families need to understand that they pay taxes. And again, this isn't a political thing. I have no politics. I did it because this is my job. I do it because I need this for my kids. I want to make, if it works for my kids, I want to make it work for your kids, Brandon. I want to make work for your kids, Dustin. And you know what? I don't think I'm a genius. I'm just working on my own project. So if there were 100 of me, we could probably make the change that we need to see. And I think that we forget that we have agency. And I think that the more people that step up, the more support there will be. And I think that's going to be what changes the education landscape. And that's not a popular opinion. Right now, it's about okay, well, OpenAI will change it, or the school system will change, or San Francisco will change it this way. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. And I'm really hopeful that we can provide the support to families that want it. And if there's anyone who's listening who really wants to be involved in that, you should contact me and I will find it, because this is like my life's mission to make sure that families can build the tools they need for their own communities in education.
Yeah. Well, and just a quick word of encouragement to all the dads out there too is maybe you don't have all the perfect things. Like Sonny, you're building a very impressive thing that's going to be at scale, but we all have a responsibility, I think, locally to maybe you're not going to be the next Sonny Caberwal and build this thing for everyone, but you could do something small, get with a few other dads in your own community and do something with your own children. You don't have to wait for like some external thing. You can just start, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy and whatever, but it's still going to be more than doing nothing, right? And throwing your hands up and saying, oh, well, I need politicians to fix it. So, be action focused at your level,
Well,
Sorry,
and the beauty of what you're doing and what we're all doing is we're not big. This isn't. If you're listening to this and we're all on this call, it's because we're not big, and that's what makes it powerful. Like, there's no agenda here except for us being dads who really want to help each other out, and that's what makes it good. If this was a big corporate sponsored thing, and then we're like, and now you got to buy this thing. That's not what this is. Like, this is like dads trying to help other dads, trying to figure some stuff out. Big things happen from that, but like, nobody's a hot shot. You just got to pick the value that you want, double down on it for your family. And then if it works for your family, make sure it can work for the family next to yours. That was my thesis. Like, if this works for my kid, can it work for somebody else's kid too? And I'm very fortunate that I got to meet you guys who are from different parts of the country, but we all are kind of very similar. And that is the good part of technology. That's the good part of social media.
Absolutely.
That's the part that you get to do once you realize that you do have your values in check and you do have the ability to control yourself. Then you can use it as a force for good.
That's awesome.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because I think there is so much opportunity. I mean, if there's two areas that are the most ripe for disruption, it's education and healthcare. And I think both of them are going to get so much better, for everybody in the next 10 years. But again, we don't have 10 years. How do we make it great in the next couple of years? And I love that urgency, right? I've always heard, like, if you want to get something done, you need a lot of passion and not quite enough time. Right. So I love that. Like, we don't have 10 years. We got to get this done soon.
Look, there's a lot of podcasts that happen right now. There is particularly right now. And I see a lot of it. I'm very close to a lot of stuff where it's like, it's $1 trillion space and we're going to make billions of dollars and all entrepreneurs should be there. But like, if I'm being honest with you, we're a bunch of dads sitting here talking about it. And we need solutions for our kids. And if a solution works for my kid, I want it to work for your kid too. That's our purpose. That's what we're here to do. I'm not here to make $1 billion. It's a $10 trillion space, but we're not. This isn't a podcast about making trillions of dollars. It's a podcast about finding solutions as a dad for your family and for yourself, and that is what I think we need to be focused on instead of thinking about it being about money. When you find good solutions, money follows.
Correct.
But right now, we need more people who are worried and care about the solutions.
Yeah,
great.
And
so
that bottom up effort, that grassroots movement is going to make it pure and successful for everyone. So yeah, I agree with you, man.
So speaking of solutions, Sonny, what is the absolute best piece of dad advice you've ever been given? Do you have something you can share with all of us where you're like, man, I'm so glad that he told me that because this is like a killer piece of advice?
I hear a lot of good advice. I'll tell you two stories, but the best piece of advice I've gotten recently, my wife is one who gives me my best advice. She's not a dad, but she reminds me all the time. She bought me something yesterday. She just hung it up today. Great woman, broken leg and all. I'm sitting here working. She takes care, makes sure I can do what I need to do. She hung up something outside my bed. She goes, "These are the good old days." So that's what it says above my side of the bed. Because I'm always stuck over there. She's like, "You're going to remember to look back and go, you were working all the time, but these are the good old days." And I think that is a really important reminder that I'm grateful for her for reminding me of. And, life isn't forever. In many times, spent a lot of time, I was misdiagnosed with terminal illness. And that's driven me down this path. And we're very lucky to be here. We're very lucky to be focused on our journey as parents. And that's why time matters. That's why our focus matters. And so you can't take any of it for granted. Um, and so that if that's the thing we can do, these are the good old days where you're at today. If you're waking up with a smile on your face, it's not going to get any better than that.
I'm going to put that in my office right here. I like that.
Yeah. So I'm one of those guys that thinks about death a lot myself, and I always say that the thoughts of death is the permission slip to live. Right? You have this awareness of the fragility of your life, and then you also have the responsibility of knowing that there are better men in the ground than me. And so it's like, what am I going to do with this calling that I've been giving? I'm here with breath in my lungs for a specific purpose and reason, and I have inherent value. And it's like, am I going to step up to the plate, like you said earlier, and be a victor and not a victim? And so it's really important that we grasp and we obtain that thought. But one of the things that I do, obviously, is I read a lot. Love reading, and I'm always interested to know what's like one of your top books that you've ever read that you would recommend to a dad.
Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience is a slightly dry but incredible read on the science of how to make an optimal experience. And another book that is a tearjerker is When Breath Becomes Air. And I think those two books for me talk about like bring home that like how do I engineer optimal experiences in my life, and how do I keep focus on the fact that like it's not forever, so we got to do the best we can with what we've got.
Beautiful, man. I'm gonna get those on my my audiobook library right after this. Thanks for those suggestions. And so final question, we love to ask this one of every dad, because it's just the purest possible question we can ask any guest. And it's just when someone asks you kind of anything around, what's your favorite thing about being a dad, or what's a favorite memory you have, just what's the first thing that pops into your head of, maybe it's an experience, maybe it's a trip, maybe it's some funny thing your kid said, but just whatever comes to mind, man.
Man, I always wanted to be a dad. Like, I used to be a nightclub promoter, playing these bands and stuff. Like, and even then, I was like, I want to be a dad because I want to see the world through somebody else's eyes that were like mine. Like, I just want to see, and like, I feel very fortunate that like, I just went with my boys to Kalahari. It's like a water park here, and I just pretended like I love indoor water parks, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna take you to all the things." And seeing that is like it's like the level of joy you used to get when you're in your 20s. It's hard to get that again when you're in your 40s. But when you do that with your kids and you can like re-experience simple joy and you can turn that corner, it's the best thing in the whole world. So it's like you get to be a kid, like a little kid all over again. That's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Oh yeah, man, that's the best. And what we have to do is, like you said it earlier, kind of have to get on their level. You kind of have to humble yourself a little bit, let them have the spotlight. But yeah, those moments are just priceless, right? So I love that. So good. All right, well, where can people, website, plug all the things. I want them to know about the app. I want them to be able to follow along with you.
Yeah,
and,
no, I
get this in the
appreciate
hands
that.
of every
So,
dad in the country.
yeah, if you are thinking about how to teach your kids to be more confident, please check out the Legends app. It's a free 5-day trial. Go to buildlegends.com. If you're at all interested in the education space and how you can participate in it, email me at Sonny, SONNY, at buildlegends.com, as I am constantly building and investing and supporting other entrepreneurs in this space. And I would love to be helpful and be a part of a journey of other dads who are trying to build for their families, because we're all in this together and nobody knows the answer, but I think together we can figure it out.
Beautiful, man. Any closing thoughts, final piece of advice or words of wisdom?
No, we're all so lucky to be here. We're lucky to be in. If you're listening to if you're listening to this podcast, your kids are going to be fine, and you're going to be fine because you've already done the first step, which is acknowledge that you have a big role to play and you're not perfect, but you want to be part of something bigger than yourself. And it's all good after that. We're here for you. And so I just want everyone to know that, like, I'm here. Anyone who wants to reach out to me via email, and I will be happy to support you however I possibly can. And I appreciate you guys for having me.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. This is a real pleasure for us. And once again, buildlegends.com. Dads, go check it out. It's going to be a really powerful tool. Brandon, you've been using it for quite a while, right? So you're a real big fan of it. Yeah, definitely going to look into it myself. Sonny, thanks again. Dads, we're in this with you. We're proud of you. We love you. Keep it up. You are part of something bigger, like Sonny said. Let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We will see you in the next episode.